Hello, and welcome to another episode of Other Record Labels, where we talk about the art and culture of running an indie record label. I'm your host, Scott Orr. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a really exciting episode today. We talk with City Slang and Jeanette Wall, and there's a kind of a funny backstory to all this. I first reached out to her back in the summer when she was with another label called ATO, whom I love, and spoiler alert, there's something to come with them in a couple of weeks. But she was in the process of leaving that job and hopping over to City Slang. And so we eventually tracked her down and did an interview. And it's a ton of fun. She has so many great insights and is a bundle of energy. And I really loved doing this episode. Before we get into that, I want to tell you something exciting because it's the new year. We have a brand new website. If you go to otherrecordlabels.com, it's all fresh and refreshed and refreshing. There's a nice picture of my ugly mug there, and lots of cool things. There's the back episodes and a good way to reach out to the podcast, and then a way to find out to find your podcast provider. So go check that out at otherrecordlabels.com, and that's where you can also get, of course, our free guide, which is developed with advice and tips from people like Jeanette and the people we've interviewed over the past couple of years. So you can get that at otherrecordlabels.com.
Oh my God, Scott, what a saga. Jesus. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Honestly, I promise I'm not this messy of an asshole. I really, really do. I've just been...
No, it's okay.
Man.
It's okay.
I feel like, well, also my email, there was like a while where your emails were going to my ATO email address, but I couldn't have access to that. I don't know, whatever. And then I would get a call from the person who's somehow receiving my ATO emails anyway. And then I was like, oh, fuck, he emailed me and then I got 6 emails from you at once and I was freaking out. Anyway, hi.
It's good to have you. No, it's okay. It's fun.
Thank you so much. I'm so tickled. Thank you so much.
It's, it was great to hear back from you. And I actually kind of forgot about how far we go back into the summer, thinking you were at a different company. Yeah. So I'll just follow you wherever. No, it's.
Oh my God. So sweet. Thank you.
It's great. And go ahead.
No, I feel like it's actually probably for the best because I feel like now I have a much better understanding of this label. I've been learning so much and I can probably not sound like a total fucking idiot when I talk about it now. So it's actually probably for the best. But
and I want to ask you a little bit about ATO if that's cool. But
absolutely.
I imagine if we had caught you at the last 2 weeks of your ATO job, you would have been stressed just getting everything together. And then by the time we publish it, you would have been gone. So
yeah, I feel like I wasn't I thought about, because there's so much of, me invested in a lot of stuff that's still going on there. So I feel like,
oh, I see.
Definitely attached to there's projects there's artists I signed who are still there, obviously. And, I like to think I left my fingerprint on there,
That's great.
as much as anyone can, it's all.
Well, I bet you that's true.
The music industry is just people claiming recognition for other people's art, which is my favorite thing to do. So
no, I think it's true. I think that way too. My hope is that my label's renaissance will happen in 200 years when I'm dead and my great grandkids uncover all these CDs and they're like, wow, look what great grandpa did.
How do you even play these things?
Yeah.
I mean, what is this?
Yeah.
Floppy disks.
That's true. At ATO, I guess I imagine because things are work so far in advance that a record that comes out this fall, you would have had some hand in.
Yeah. And it's also every label functions so differently. So I'm still kind of unlearning certain habits, not for better or worse. It is what it is. City Slang is a much we put out much fewer records, and it's really amazing.
Right.
It's a lot more time to think about the So I'm just relearning a bunch of stuff too, but also like, I don't know, appreciating different kinds of music. It's all different. It's all, pretty, you caught me in a very transitional period in like my life in so many ways, but I feel like I'm a little more stable now.
We could, if you want to reschedule for another 6 months and we could see how you're doing, we could just make this show about you.
Oh my gosh. You listen, you read me, like, this is it.
Well, let me ask you about the transition a little bit. Cause when we first started emailing you, you were at ATO, then you moved to City Slang. Can you tell me about that move? And I mean, when people that I talk to and anybody dreaming of working in the industry, getting onto a label, especially a label as cool as ATO, would be, the pinnacle for them. What motivates a move at that stage for you?
Well, I think like, it was totally my dream job. And I think, it was, and it was, I was working with my favorite people in the whole world and my favorite artists. And it was really special, but like at a certain level, what motivated it was, offered this amazing opportunity to, run another wildly successful, legendary independent label, but for the whole of the United States. So like, little bit of an ego boost, but a little bit of a title boost, but also just, I'm 28. So like, it's not, I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm also, I'm pretty young. So I feel like getting that opportunity when you're so young is it's kind of like a big flashing arrow.
Right. Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
And it was,
When you're talking about dream jobs and all these different opportunities, was there a moment, like how far back does this dream go? Like, was there a moment early in your life you can recall that really inspired you to get into the business side of music?
Oh, I mean, like every other kind of millennial working in music, I think I saw Almost Famous and was like, I want to do that. Or some like horrible, whatever I projected that to be.
Go ahead.
No, I just feel like I had a very romanticized vision of it. And I wanted to be a journalist for so long. Like I wanted to be Chuck Klosterman or, I wanted to, or be a radio DJ. I wanted to be Cheryl Waters or something. So, I think that when I realized I could do a little bit of all of that stuff and be really close with artists and follow projects along. I didn't even know what a record label was until I was like, maybe like 19. Like I didn't even know what a label did.
Yeah, sure.
So probably, but I think on the seed of it all came from watching some silly movies in 2000, 2001.
Was there a format that you grew up on? Like what format or how did you consume music the most, like in high school?
Definitely CDs.
Yeah,
I had
same.
mixed CDs. Same. And like, definitely, I think in high school, like LimeWire.
Yes. Yeah. This is a safe place.
Yes. Don't tell on me. No, totally had like, I made tons of mixed CDs, like mixed CDs for every week, mixed CDs for like, my parents got rid of some stuff, when they moved to Florida, but I recently found a bunch of just random mixed CDs that are all like equally embarrassing.
So you made these for yourself?
Oh yeah. And for friends, for everyone. And I think like, that was like, cassette tapes were a little harder to come by the time I was, in my early teens. So I think like CDs were just everything. Oh my God. I went to the library. I burned so many CDs from the library.
Oh yeah, that's right. Cause you could borrow them for free. I always thought that was like back in the ripping days. I was like, I uncovered something here.
I know, the secret loophole of supporting your local public library.
Yeah.
So.
And did you make artwork for the CDs as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely like, and every CD was called something like Driving to the Mall Part 4, like something like just became a parody of myself. It was very like,
I'm a little bit jealous of that because I'm a little bit older than you, not by much, but I'm just a little bit older than you. But in the tech world, like there, the 4 or 5 years that I'm older than you is like CD burners were harder to come by when I was in high school. So people were wanting to mix CDs, but it was the kind of thing where you would make one every 2 months and you would save up money and buy a disc and then go to your friend's house and hang out there for 4 hours while it burned at like 2 times speed.
Like we can watch Wayne's World 1 and 2, and then we can have the soundtracks on CD. So been there.
That's cool.
Been there for sure. Sorry, I'm turning my text off my phone. So
no, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm assuming are you recording now?
I thought you were recording.
No, am I?
Joking.
Should I be recording?
No, I'm joking. Yeah, we're recording. Yeah, we're going. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, on the record.
Yes, you're on the record. Sorry, I don't know. Yeah, I should have said that at the beginning.
But I also realized that my computer is making noises.
No, it's good. The sound is good.
Okay, great.
When we, I want to go back to the beginning of us here. On one of the first times you stood me up, one of the many times, you were meeting with something came up and you were meeting with a potential artist that you wanted to sign. What does that look like? I mean, not that meeting specifically, but how often does that happen? That you're pursuing artists and you have to drop everything and go and schmooze with them. Are you buying them drinks? What does that look like?
It depends. It's different all the time. And honestly, like where I'm at with City Slang now, I mean, I'm in a position where I'm really lucky in that, they're really supportive of me seeking out new talent. We have a pretty open slate in next year.
Cool.
And, and I feel like, at City Sing specifically, it's very like, everyone's really, like I said, everyone's really supportive, but also we're all sort of collaborating to kind of make the next chapter of whatever the A&R process looks like at City Slang. So, it's definitely different for every artist. And I try to, just approach it like a person.
Sure.
There's no formula. I kind of just try to be really honest and very vulnerable, because I feel like a lot of times, in talking to artists in the past, it's like music industry folks, people who are wooing artists, A&R people, publishing people, label people, agents, whatever. I feel like a lot of times it can be really dehumanizing to kind of just like meet with someone who's like, I want to make money off of you.
Yes, of course.
Which ultimately, of course, is what we're all here to balance, arts and commerce in the most
for sure
thoughtful way we can. But I just try to be like, I'm a genuine music fan, and this is what your music makes me think of, and this is what I am inspired by your music. And this is because that's at the core of anything. Like, hopefully that's why people work well together, is because they have similar outlooks on what a record can do, be it emotionally or financially or creatively. I think I know that's sort of all kind of esoteric bullshit, but it is. No. But it's also like, I try to just be like, as, specific as possible.
Yeah.
And be like, think about, well, this person, and when I'm thinking about being like, oh, this person, because I think I'm remembering the right, because I've also been doing, not a lot. I don't want to sound like I'm dating around, but I have been meeting with a lot of artists lately, and they're all very special, and I love them. But no, I think it's like, I try to think about. It's like dating. It really is, though. It's like, well, I want to be sensitive and think about what kind of food they like. What kind of do they want to go to, like a quiet coffee shop, or do they want to go to a bar, like a shitty, gross, divey bar? Like, and it's
when you're talking to them, do you ever get a sense of that they're like eyeing you up, and that they are, we've talked about this before with other A&R people about how there used to be this bad rep with A&R people and with labels. Do you ever get a sense when you're talking to someone that they're on guard and they're weary that you're going to take advantage of them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't they assume that?
Right. And what do you do to diffuse that?
I think just by being, like I said, like my personality kind of lends itself to oversharing and being pretty blunt and vulnerable. And I think that, like, I mean, and trying not to be manipulative, like trying not to manipulate how they see me, because ultimately, like, at least a thread of truth is in that guarding. Like, that's like, I would, of course I'm like a big plushy teddy bear, and I like to just think I exude warmth, but it's also like, it's a hard line, because sure. I mean, you have to, I'm not a unbiased person when it comes to any artist. So it's kind of like, I expect that a little bit. And if it doesn't, like, so I think that there's some degree of that with most artists, and basically any artist, because it's like, they're like, oh, like, I'm going to give up my child, this album, these songs, this, like, reflection of either my experience or experience that I'm contemplating. I feel like that's a fucking heavy thing. So I pretty, not to make it like I mean, this, it's not open heart surgery, but pretty, it can be really serious and pretty, and it's also, you have to consider especially with labels, it's like, this is like our managers too. It's like, this is the person that's like gonna help form what your career looks like.
Right.
So, I try to approach conversations with artists that I love with as much excitement as a fan, but also with the kind of humbling notion that I'm trying to woo them to give me their firstborn child.
Let me ask you, where are you generally, like, where do you find people like this, or what types of places have you discovered new talent that you want to sit down and talk about signing?
Oh man. I mean, one of the artists that we're talking to right now, I had a friend of a friend meet her in front of a bar at a show she wasn't playing. like I just happened to get her SoundCloud link from like a random conversation that I had. And sometimes it's, I look at what, I mean, there's obviously like Spotify discovery. Like, I honestly don't use Spotify as much for discovery, because I also think that, like, I want to get to know, I similarly to how I try to be vulnerable, like, I need a kind of certain vulnerability, or I don't need it, but I long for that human connection with another artist, with an artist. So that's kind of my goal. And so I try to discover artists through friends or like personal connections, or like, just so I can get a sense of who they actually are, because that's, I think when I want because there's no real because I feel like this is another question is like, what do you look for in an artist? And it's really just someone very selfishly and very like in the very self-involved way that I approach this because it's the most honest way that I feel like I can. It's like, can I add value to this person's career?
Sure.
Do I have ideas? Do I understand what they're saying and how they're trying to say it?
I don't think that's self-involved at all. I think that's the right question to ask because, I think that's great. Otherwise they don't need you. And for you to acknowledge that, I think that's great.
Well, and it's because it's, not no matter what anyone says, like, it's not like any label or any manager or any agent can just work with a artist just because they have similar artists on their roster. Like it really is like and that shouldn't inform to some level, but it's like kind of, it's like you're a team and you're people that are all have similar goals, but there's communication styles. It really is like any of these relationships are pretty intense, or they can be. So I think it's, it really is about connecting as people, but also of course, connecting to the art and understanding that. But I think to do that, you got to connect as people. And, there's some artists that are completely in control of their own destiny in a way that's pretty impressive. And they have a clear vision, and it's really just about getting resources to execute that vision. Sure. And that's great too. I think I personally really like being involved in the creative process just because that's the fun shit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, Jeanette, like, there's in my mind, there's two different artists. There's an artist who has been DIY for 15 years and they have a following and they know exactly what they want. And on one hand, that's a little less work for you. You just have to kind of set things up logistically for them. On the other hand, there's like this tiny little baby who's saying, I don't know what to do. I'm talented, but I have no idea how to record myself or whatever.
Right.
Like, do you, are both the same in your eyes, or do you prefer one over the other?
Oh, they're both the same, but I think it is like how open someone is to like, cause it's like, cause also like the what's the word I'm looking for? The kind of deceptive thing about a baby artist who's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you don't really know what you're doing either. It's like, I have an artist that has never recorded in a studio before, and I'm just now connecting her to producers and stuff like that. And I, of course, have this amazing vision of what, is going to work for her. And, but also she's 18. She doesn't have any, like, she's it's not like she knows what she likes and what she doesn't like yet. So it is like, it's all just kind of guess and check on some level. Yeah. And I've found myself, I've kind of learned one of my, I think being, approaching my 30s, I started to learn the really hard lesson of like, just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's the fucking best idea that's ever been had. Right. So, I think I really started to meditate on the fact, like, I just wrote an email to another artist that was like, here are a bunch of ideas. Here's a list of photographers I think that would be good for you to work with. Here's some videographers. Here's art directors. Here's publicists. Here's agents. I literally sent her like an entire stream of consciousness. It's probably going to be super overwhelming, and she'll be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But I've really learned to say and believe the idea of like, take whatever resonates with you and please ignore the rest.
I see.
Like one thing I did at ATO with a lot of the artists that I worked with, I made like, Scott, I think I made like, I'm trying to look at my Pinterest account. I think I made like in the span of like 2 years. I would make Pinterest boards for literally anything, and like music videos, album art, what they're wearing on late night television, and like
wow,
like crazy like.
And you would send this to the artists?
Yeah, for sure. And I have. Oh yeah, I'm like looking through some of them now. I have.
This would make a great coffee table book.
One day, I'll get all the rights to all this.
The many outfits of Jim James.
Oh yeah, seriously. Like I have one that's all Raylan Baxter clothes. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. It's all it's all like photos of Bill Murray from like 1989. And like, oh yeah, look, there's some photos from My So-Called Life. Jared Leto. Yeah. It's kind of all over the place. But yeah, I feel like that whatever that mechanism is of like trying to tap into like help an artist tap into a creative vision just by throwing a bunch of shit against the wall and seeing what sticks. Like it's just my process.
Okay.
My process being sitting on Pinterest for hours and hours and hours because I'm like a stay-at-home mom. Just looking at different like album covers from.
And the artists find this helpful?
I mean, sometimes they're like, I know what the New York Dolls look like. Like, you don't need to. But I think it's sometimes at least, even if I get one thing right, at least they know that I'm listening.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most important thing, because I don't know
I want to circle back to your role here because I want to kind of get some clarity about this. First of all, and I want to talk about City Slang because ironically, Caribou is a local artist here in Hamilton. So the news of like a tour, so where I'm from, and he's like a bit of a hometown hero here. I don't know him personally, but his new song and tour is getting a bit of press around here.
So good.
And that's actually like one of the cool things that I love about researching for this show is like when I check out a label's past releases and discover records that I've loved for like 10 years or so, like the Not a Surf stuff. I've been a huge fan of them for a long time. And seeing that those guys are with you is just, that's been such a cool thing. Can you talk to me a little bit about your role specifically at City Slang? Like what are your day-to-day responsibilities? What does your day-to-day look like?
Mm-hmm. So I am the U.S. label manager of City Slang.
Wow.
That's my official title. So they have entrusted me with a lot of all of their U.S. business. And so my day-to-day is kind of just using what the primary team in Berlin is working on. And seeing how I can add to it for this territory. And it's a pretty awesome thing. And the team is so amazing. They're like my favorite people I've ever met.
That's awesome. Where are you guys based out of?
I'm in New York, obviously. Okay. And then, the rest, there's about 15 or so people in Berlin.
Okay.
And then there is a UK label manager outside of London, and a French label manager. I believe that's his title, based out of Paris. So, and I'm actually going to meet. I've met most everyone. I went to Berlin a couple months ago, but I'm gonna officially meet everyone over Thanksgiving, and
that's great.
That'll be really exciting. I'm going to go back to Berlin. So yeah.
So can you give, just before we elaborate a little bit on your role, could you give me a history of the label? Like it's about 30 years next year.
Next year is 30 years.
Amazing.
Christoph, who is still the general manager of the label, and is also like totally my hero. Like just I mean, I do not think I will send this to him to listen to it, but I can gush a little about it. He is so, he's like who I want to be when I grow up. He's so thoughtful and generous and has such a good ear. So yeah, City Slang, he started putting out records in the 90s for like Hole, Super Chunk,
right.
Some little bands you might have heard of, and I think and collaborated pretty closely with both Sub Pop and Merge to make sure that the records that they were putting out in the US were properly represented in Europe and the UK. So he had and over the last 30 years, there's a lot of pretty amazing releases that have been out on City Slang, like the Suburbs, Arcade Fire. Their fucking Whole records are really what I can nerd out about. Yeah. But also, there are artists that have been on the label for almost 30 years, like Lamb Chop, for instance. Like they've been with City Slang since I think as soon as they were with Merge, maybe before. And I think Caribou is another one that's been pretty much on City Slang. I'm trying not to talk out my ass too much.
That's okay. Nobody fact checks these. Don't worry.
Groovy. Thank you. Okay. Let me look too. Who else am I thinking of? EMA, Wyoke put a lot of their early records out with City Slang. And Calexico, I think, has always been with City Slang in Europe. So yeah, pretty. I mean, and pretty out. Pretty. I think Christoph really has only ever signed things that he really, really loves personally, and gets excited about, and that's kind of like been the vision. So yeah, it's a little all over the place, but it's also, to me, it all kind of makes sense, and I think. That was kind of how it was a similar kind of state that ATO was when I started. When I was working, especially when I first started as doing A&R, I pretty much only got like folk records, like banjo records. And I was like, this is not what I'm trying to do. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course.
Yeah.
It was definitely like, oh, you work with Old Crow Medicine Show. Let's this record. And I was like, I pretty much only listen to like pop music. So I'm like, I don't know about this. But yeah, so I think what was I saying? Anyway, so yeah, City Slang. Pretty amazing history. So I think one of the primary things I've been thinking about is how to reflect that in the work I'm doing for the label for the US, because it's so Eurocentric and has been sort of is similar standing to these, US indie giants. Like, how do I translate that to people I work with in America? And I think it's pretty easy whenever you look at the history. It's like, oh yeah, like this is a pretty influential little label that's pretty modest. So I'm trying to just, brag a lot.
Is there pressure when you're signing someone to look back at the catalog and say, this fits, this aesthetic or this ethos of this new artist fits into what we've done in the past 30 years?
No, I think it's really like, I think it really goes back to like, are you inspired by it? Do you really love it? And then, there's a really rigorous vetting process where we all email each other, telling each other how we feel about it. And it's it's been really personally confidence boosting and, really exciting to kind of be supported in the way that I have at this label. It's like everyone is really supportive of each other, and everyone is really excited whenever we have, because there are so few new signings. It's like, it's like welcoming a new baby into the world. Sure. It's like, oh my God.
I think a lot of us, I think a lot of the small labels think that everything is easier for a more established label. Is that true? Is it easier to get a Pitchfork review or an official playlist for a label like City Slang?
Oh God. No.
Really? It's not?
I mean, I don't know.
What about for a brand new artist that most people haven't heard of?
I think for a brand new artist, I mean, sure. I do not know the answer to that question. Okay. I suppose. Okay. I won't claim to. I think that it's changing so much now. It's like the press, like the idea of a premiere is like so obsolete, and playlisting the whole fucking, I'm still learning, and I'm a millennial, so we're supposed to. You and I are supposed to know what's going on. I'm kind of looking around like, I totally know what's happening. I totally understand that. I mean, sure. Like, I guess I would hope that it is easier in the sense that I hope people trust that a label like City Slang is going to really be interested in it. But I can't say for sure, because I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what the Gen Zers, who I'm sure Spotify have hired for to anticipate their algorithm. Yeah. I don't know.
It's a bunch of 11-year-olds out there who are.
I know. That's what's happening.
Is it this research I have here is old, because we were going to talk a couple of months ago, and so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I'll fire all of our research staff. But do you have your own label too?
I did. Well, okay. So this is it remains the same answer as a couple months ago. So okay. I ran my own label. It kind of started as a project in college. Oh, okay. I applied for some grant money when I was at Syracuse University to put out vinyl records, and that kind of birthed my label. And my, I kind of, my dad in particular was always really supportive of me trying to learn things by doing them. So, I guess you could call it a label. Sure, yeah. I put out cassette tapes for my friends' bands in college. And then, after I graduated, I was, varying degrees of employed. That was always kind of an outlet. I haven't put out a record, probably something at least the last 3 years, maybe 4 years. Sure. I can't really remember, but
let me ask you to transfer some of the knowledge that you have from City Slang and at ATO for independents and small little startups. Yeah. I mean, whether you were to one day go out on your own again, or from an insider's perspective, do you have any advice for smaller labels? I mean, just some general advice.
Well, I think I look back on the label I ran was called Miss Grant. Okay. And I'm pretty proud of the fact there's some I got to put out some records from some really cool artists. I put out the first Vagabond EP. Wow. I put out some early music by Adult Mom. Wow. And I mean, I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing, so it probably didn't really have anything to do with me. But I think I would say just bet on your friends. Whenever you really enjoy your friends' music, it's probably not just because you're friends with them. I have plenty of friends whose music I don't really like. Yeah. But that's not why we're friends. So sure. I think you kind of look around you, and if you have a community that of people around you that are making music that need support or would like support, and you can help them be a part of that kind of at the heart of it, I think that's kind of what a bedroom, quote unquote, bedroom indie label is. It is just like helping your friends do something special. And if I'm
sorry to interrupt you. When I talk to the labels who listen to this show and I communicate with them on the side, a lot of the issues and the challenges that they face surround marketing and kind of getting their artists and their releases heard above the noise of bigger labels, or even just labels the same size of them, because it all happens usually on a Friday morning. Are there things from a marketing standpoint that you guys do at City Slang or in your past that you think that smaller labels should know about?
Well, there's not really like, there's like those programs where you can like pay $300 and there'll be someone who like plugs you into like one Digster playlist, and
okay,
allegedly, but I don't know how any of that shit works, and I don't really believe in any of that shit, so I don't really even know what I'm talking about. I can't tell you what one's called, but I know that they exist.
Yeah, I
would say there's no magic key, and I can probably I was talking to this guy who runs a label called Marbled Arms, and he just put out his first record with this artist Lightning Bug.
Okay.
And it's super good. And I really like his vision. He's really cool. And he kind of asked me a similar thing. Mm-hmm. He's like, this is just like me. What do I do? And I was like, Spotify didn't exist really when maybe it existed, but it wasn't playlisting wasn't a thing whenever I was putting out records. So I can't speak specifically to that, but I think, I think that kind of just, I don't know, maybe it's like find the one person you can get connected to who like has, how do I say this? Mm-hmm. All right, I'll start over. Okay. Find the one person who you can get connected to who has a megaphone that's bigger than yours.
Right. I see.
Maybe it's, I was thinking about it like whenever I first started, I had a friend from high school who was the music editor for the Alt Weekly in Indianapolis, where I grew up. And I would send her records, and I just found all these little like, friendships basically I could take advantage of.
Right.
Basically, I just, I think that's kind of the essence of it, is you just try to find whoever,
Yeah, without saying those dirty words like tastemakers or, those influencers, those type of words. But I think that there's truth to that. I mean, on one hand, you could pay some influencer on Instagram if you want, but I think there's probably more. What you're saying is there's more organic ways to do it. I think that's a great tip. I wrote that down. Find someone who has a megaphone that's louder than yours. I think that's a really good thing. It's something that a lot of us do naturally, but we don't really think that we do it.
Exactly. Or
it happens where, hey, my friend tweeting about my record does better than me tweeting about my record. Why is that? Right. Interesting.
They have 300 followers that don't follow you or something like that. Yeah. It's kind of like, I I have trouble articulating it in a way that doesn't sound like I'm at a South by Southwest panel trying to get you to download the app. So
to download your app, yeah.
And I also and clearly sound full of like shit because I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think that that's kind of like, if I sat down and I was like, I'm going to start miscreant again, what would I do different, or what would I do now?
Yeah.
And I think it really is just like realizing that if it's about creating a community around yourself, and ultimately maybe it's like finding other what's the word I'm looking for? It's about finding other ways to measure success, because maybe I think that a lot of times, especially indie rock bands, or indie-esque, whatever genre, indie bands get really hung up on the same 3 Spotify playlists, the same writers at Pitchfork,
yes,
the same Stereo Gum articles, the same top 5 lists or whatever. Yeah. And it's really easy to get hung up on why am I not on that? Or why is my artist not on that? Like, I get hung up on it all the time.
For sure.
Like, what? But ultimately there's only 20 of those spaces or 50 of those spaces, and there's like 20,000 people making music. I just made that number up. I have no idea.
I actually think, I mean, that could be really close. like right? On a
There's
Friday.
Like 20,000 indie rock bands who are trying to do those things right now.
Yeah.
So like, there's only like, now that like Kesha can do a fucking Tiny Desk, there's
yes.
There's a lot of opportunities for Tiny Desk. Like, these really, they were things that were already really hard to get, are even harder to get now. So you got to find other ways to measure your success. And ultimately, I think that kind of becomes, when you're working on in a quote unquote bedroom label, that becomes stuff that's in your community. That's stuff that, I feel like is happening outside your door. Like, it's like, I got 150 kids to come to my basement party.
Right.
That's what that's what the label was really for when I was in college. It was to get to people to come to my parties. Yeah. And like, I think, and not to say that's like, because ultimately you have 150 people who are going to read that, Stereo Gum top 5 videos of the week article, and you have 150 kids who are going to like get drunk, party to your band.
Yeah. That's a great
point. Or
point.
maybe actively listen to your band.
No, it's true.
It's true. So I think it's really not getting hung up on these admittedly arbitrary means of saying how important your art is, and kind of finding other things that
I think
illustrate that.
I think that's a great point. I mean, you look at some of those Spotify playlists, and an average one, they might net you 2,000 plays in a week, but maybe instead of going,
how much money is that?
Well, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. But I was going to say, I mean, if it's just for exposure, find 20 ways to reach 100 people, 20 different ways and that could happen in your community.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of like, I feel more inclined to push it to the tangible world than on the internet, right? Because it's like,
for sure.
Because of course, I grew up in Greenwood, motherfucking Indiana, where I didn't know. I didn't even know where the venue was. Yeah. And that's what they said when they cut the big red ribbon. But it's like, it's like, well, there are, I'm positive, I know this for a fact, that there were like at least 20 other kids in my high school who were sitting on the internet trying to sitting on MySpace trying to figure out what they like, where their favorite band was, and like, are not even understanding like what a tour is or what going to a show is like. It's like, I don't know. I think that it's kind of, and it's also, you know, easy for me to talk about this living in Brooklyn, New York. But I think if I was starting my own label, I would just try to find the other people, if you really are doing it yourself, or regardless if you have a distributor or whatever, it's really, at the end of the day, it's about having that, the goal is to have that connection. It's not about getting on New Indie Week or whatever, New Music Friday or whatever. It's like, it's about like, there was this artist I went to this festival, Otis Mountain Get Down, this year, which like I'm afraid to say on this podcast because that's how I'm going to do all of my A&R from now on. It's basically like a new artist festival.
Oh,
it's like, well, it's like, it's 6 hours upstate in like basically in Vermont.
Okay.
In the Adirondacks. Everybody camps. There's no cell service. It's like a very mini Bonnaroo.
Okay.
But all like predominantly world music and breaking artists.
Wow.
And it's unbelievable. You should check it out.
I'll censor it when you and so keep it secret for you.
You can put it out there. I'm all for even playing field. Come on, you guys. Like,
just give the wrong date.
Yeah, it's in.
Give the week after
January.
It's in January.
No, it's not. Definitely not in the summer when it's fucking beautiful and green. But no, it's actually. It was. Oh shit! Now I lost my place.
What was it called for real?
Oh, it's called Otis Mountain Get Down.
Otis Mountain.
Wait, shit. Why was I talking about this? I totally lost my train of thought.
Oh,
that's okay.
That's all right.
Well, wait, what was the question?
The question was about a half hour ago, but it was basically about. We were talking about not going after the traditional write-ups or the traditional playlist, but
yes, totally.
Different ways to measure success.
Well, I don't know how I was connecting that to Otis Mountain Get Down, but anyway, you should put that in there because
I will. And
cool, and they have good programming. Just edit it into the podcast, however it makes sense.
Yeah, I'll see if they'll want to run a little commercial on here.
Great,
No, and I appreciate. I mean, these little tips are great, and I loved. My notes here are covered from the last couple of minutes of these different ways to measure success and pushing things into the real world. I think that's really helpful, and I think a lot of us who are small time and are always looking for a different route. Basically, how do I take the back roads to get to the same spot? And yeah,
totally.
So I appreciate that.
Also, like, it also makes you realize, like, oh no, I know why I was talking about Otis Mountain Get Down. Okay. Starting the story
We're back,
over.
Folks.
Here's where you cut for the edit, whoever is editing this. Okay, so I was at this festival, Otis Mountain Get Down, and there was this artist from West Africa, and I should look up her name, but she was incredible, and she said this thing where she was like, she was like, thank you for coming to my set. I'm glad you enjoy my music. Songs are just little mirrors for us to reflect on our own experience, what I'm sharing with you, or something to that effect. And it's like, that's the whole fucking reason we're doing this bullshit anyway. So you're going to have a lot more of that if you don't worry. I mean, because obviously you have to play the game. You have to do the Spotify bullshit. You got to do the Apple Music bullshit. You got to do the Amazon Music bullshit. You got to do like the DSPs, whatever.
Right.
You got to, sing the song, dance the dance.
Yeah.
But also, if you can't put all of your emotional worth on that, especially as an artist, because that will just make you feel like shit.
Yeah.
Even the artists who do get that shit, they do. I mean, I'm sure they didn't get something else.
Or not getting it again. They think they expect it a second time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's the more you focus on this kind of connections, I'm mostly talking to myself here.
Go ahead.
It's advice that I should listen to myself, is what I mean. But it's like, you have to focus on those connections and that kind of, and that way of teaching people about your music, because that also ultimately, I think, usually ends up being more easily translated into lifelong fans, people who will support you financially by buying your records, by going to your shows. I think because, I mean, if you want the ultimate balance of arts and commerce, it's like, because of course, I can say all this like, floofy shit about gaining those personal connections. But of course, that doesn't translate necessarily into money or records sold or streams. So I think you figure out how to do that in a context that makes people want to support your music. So, and most people will. So if you like enjoy music and you have this positive experience, you're going to want to support them. So I don't know. That's my philosophy.
I love it all. It's great. And this is something I usually go back over and listen to and make sure I don't miss anything. But what I love about talking with you and even it shows in how long it took me to get you on the phone, is it just shows how hard you work. And I love seeing work ethic like that in people, especially in art. And congratulations on the new job. And it's amazing. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm lucky. I mean, dude, like, it's just rock and roll. Like, I think like, I better work this hard because I'm actually with my friend who is a child psychologist, and she is working on a licensing exam, and she just took like 20 pages of notes, like, while we were doing this interview. I can see her downstairs, and I'm like, I couldn't fucking do that. Yes. I better find some other fucking way to add value, myself like, well,
I think you've added a lot of value to our listeners, and it's going to be great.
Thank you. I hope so.
I'm going to stop the tape, but I want to ask you some secrets about My Morning Jacket and Not a Surf and Brittany Howard. And those secrets will stay safe with me. Thank you, folks at home, for listening. What a great episode. Make sure you check out City Slang Records. You can go to their website at cityslang.com. They have, if you're listening to this in early 2020, they have 2 huge records that are coming out that I'm really excited for. Caribou in February and Not a Surf early this year as well. And so it's so great to have City Slang on the podcast. What a great label. Make sure you go check them out and pick out one of their records. Also, go to our website, brand new. Go look at that beautiful snowstorm of beauty, otherrecordlabels.com. And more importantly, that's where you can get a copy of our free guide. If you're one of those people who are thinking about starting a label, if you're inspired by some of our guests and inspired by this topic, then you can go to otherrecordlabels.com and get a free guide, and that'll help you dive into this world. Thanks so much for listening.